Hello all, my name is Mary Worm and welcome to my poetry presentation on John Henry Newman's poem, Lead Kindly Light. Lead Kindly Light was written in 1833. It was originally published in an English magazine in 1834 under the original title of The Pillar of the Cloud. So, who was John Henry Newman? John Henry Newman was a Catholic theologian, writer, and poet born in London, England on February 21st, 1801. He was raised Anglican, and from the age of 7, he began to take a particular interest in writing. At the age of 15, he began to attend Trinity University and later transferred to Oxford's Oriel University. While at Oriel, he studied and became an Anglican priest, where he served as the university's vicar for the parish. He also taught at Oriel. Though Newman was an Anglican priest, he still continued to question the Anglican faith, and this was seen as controversial. This led to a dispute between him and the Oriel College's provost. This dispute ultimately led him to resign his position as vicar of the university. After his resignation, Newman took an extensive voyage around the Mediterranean. He visited Rome, which particularly captivated him. While he was there, he felt like he was being called to a higher mission in life. While still on this voyage, Newman became extremely ill, and feeling both physical and spiritual turmoil, he wrote the verses of Lead Kindly Light. Newman recovered from his illness, returned home, and continued to search for the true faith. He found that his beliefs were more continuously aligned with that of Catholic teaching, and on October 9th, 1845, he was received into the Roman Catholic Church. Newman again traveled to Rome, where he studied and eventually was ordained a Catholic priest. Pope Leo XIII elevated him to the position of cardinal in 1879. John Henry Newman died in Birmingham, England in 1890 and was canonized a saint by Pope Francis in 2019. Now I'm going to read the poem Lead Kindly Light. Lead Kindly Light by John Henry Newman. Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom. Lead thou me on. The night is dark, and I am far from home. Lead thou me on. Keep thou my feet. I do not ask to see the distant scene. One step, enough for me. I was not ever thus, nor prayed that thou shouldst lead me on. I loved to choose and see my path, but now lead me on. I loved the garish day, in spite of fears. Pride ruled my will. Remember not past years. So long thy power has blessed me, sure it still will lead me on, or moor and fen, or crag and torrent, till the night is gone, and with the morn those angel faces smile, which I have loved long since, and lost awhile. Lead kindly light amidst the encircling gloom, lead thou me on. So in this first line, the narrator is asking God to come with his light into the gloom or darkness of his soul. So the darkness here is referring more to spiritual darkness than a visible darkness. The words encircling gloom is a metaphor for spiritual darkness or distance from God. This distance could be caused by rejection of God or sin, or simply just a lack of knowledge of God. The words of this line create a bleak and somber imagery, and particularly highlights the narrator's pleading prayer. The night is dark and I am far from home, lead thou me on. So assonance is used with the words gloom, and then over here when it says, gloom, and then home. The dark and lonely tone continues. I am far from home. This could mean that he is far from his home, England, because when he wrote this, he was in the Mediterranean. It could also mean that he is far from his heavenly home, which seems to be the narrator's purpose. It's made more apparent as the poem continues. The words "lead thou me on" are repeated kind of like a refrain throughout the poem. Keep thou my feet, I do not ask to see the distant scene, one step enough for me. So see and me are, again, examples of assonance. The narrator is trusting that, or he's giving to God his future and saying, I do not need to see the future in order to trust God. He trusts that even taking a small step of faith, God will reach out then and help him. When the narrator says, keep thou my feet, he is asking God to guide his small steps of faith throughout his life. I was not ever thus, nor prayed that thou shouldst lead me on. I love to choose and see my path, but now lead me on. Again, assonance is used. In these lines, the narrator is explaining how he drifted far from God, from God's sight, because he put earthly pleasures in the place of God. He tried to make those earthly pleasures take the place of God. He loved to make his own decisions. His choices were made so that he could somewhat try to predict his future. When he says, I was not ever thus, nor prayed that thou shouldst lead me on, he is saying that until now he did not ask God to step in and guide his path. These desires to choose his own path are gone now, and his focus has shifted, and he's realizing that he cannot navigate life on his own without God's help. The tone is slowly shifting as the narrator repeats, lead thou me on. So this is apparent because in the first stanza, the narrator is saying, lead thou me on, in a very pleading manner. In the second stanza, there's a little more confidence. He's saying it is right, it is good, it is necessary that God should lead him on. I loved the garish day, in spite of fears. Pride ruled my will, remember not past years. Again, assonance is used. The narrator here is recalling how much he loved earthly pleasures, how much they ruled his life. Instead of being ruled by God, he was ruled by these pleasures and sought after self-gratification. The narrator, when he says, remember not past years, he's asking God for forgiveness. He's saying, please do not judge me harshly for my past failings. So long thy power has blessed me, sure it still will lead me on, or moor and fen, or crag and torrent, till the night is gone. So, as before mentioned, you will notice how the mood is slowly shifting with every repetition of lead me on. In the first stanza, the narrator pleads with God to lead him on. In the second stanza, the narrator states with confidence that it is right that God should lead him on. Now, in the third stanza, the narrator says with certainty and some hope that surely God will lead him on. The mood has shifted from some doubt to confident trust. The words moor, fen, crag, torrent, and night here are metaphors of life's struggles, difficulties, and uncertainties. The narrator is trusting that God will guide him through these uncertainties, through the hard times, to his goal, heaven. The imagery in these final lines creates a sense of precariousness or instability or uncertainty. So just as these things are uncertain, so is life. So life is uncertain, and the narrator is asking God to guide him through those uncertain times, the times when the narrator doesn't know what to do. With the last line, till the night is gone, the tone is slowly shifting, and it's becoming more optimistic. And with the morn those angel faces smile, which I have loved long since and lost a while. Again, assonance is used. The word "and with the morn," it's lightening the mood. It's a metaphor for the end of life and the beginning of earthly life. It is almost like the narrator has woken up from the sleep of death and is now has reached heaven. There's imagery here that creates the feeling of seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. When the narrator says, and with those says those angel faces smile, this would suggest that the narrator has gone to heaven, or will have gone to heaven. The narrator explains that even though he was lost on his journey to God, his soul had always longed to be with God. His mind wasn't sure, didn't know, but his soul had always had this connection with God, that it took to fulfill, and his soul had always longed for his goal, which was heaven. The mood has shifted throughout this poem from spiritual turmoil and uncertainty to joy, serenity, and confidence in God's guidance. So, what is the connection to society? Well, this poem was not particularly written for any time period in society. It was more just the narrator struggling with his own doubts, but I do think that it is relevant to um, all peoples throughout human history. The world we live in, society, we often get caught up in earthly pleasures, and it can lead us down a dark path of greed. We want wealth, we want fame. But the unfortunate thing is, the more that we receive, the more we want, because we cannot find the satisfaction. And so that is why, after taking part in these seemingly good things, the narrator realizes that he needs God alone to fill that void in his heart and to be satisfied. What are the themes here? There are two themes that present themselves. The first is that God is always caring for and guiding his creation, whether his creation know it, whether they want his guidance. He is always there, never far from his creation. The second theme is man's innate search for a higher power. No matter how caught up in worldly pleasures one becomes, they cannot be fully satisfied. So with the first theme, this is made apparent when the narrator states, "So long thy power has blessed me, sure it still will lead me on." And with the second theme, it is made apparent when the narrator says, "And with the morn those angel faces smile, which I have long loved long since and lost a while." So this is a lyrical poem made up of 18 lines. The poem is divided into three 6-line stanzas or sestets. It follows an A-B-C-C rhyme scheme. So this means that the first and the third lines rhyme, the second and the fourth lines rhyme, and the fifth and the sixth lines rhyme together. There are 2 meters in this poem. The first is iambic pentameter in the lines 1, 3, 5, and 6, and iambic dimeter in the lines 2 and 4. So this means that the first line of each stanza has 5 iambs or syllables, and the second line has 2. The third line has 5 iambs, and the fourth has 2. The fifth and sixth both have 5 iambs. This pattern is repeated throughout each sestet or stanza. As aforementioned, alliteration is used quite frequently throughout this poem. This poem has a hymn-like or psalm-like quality, and that is most likely why quite a few composers have put a melody to these words. So why did I choose this poem? I chose this poem because, actually the first time I heard it, we were singing it in 8-part harmony in my choir. I got the honor of being able to sing it for and be directed by the composer. You can see him kind of here in the corner of this image. It is a beautiful, beautiful poem and a beautiful hymn. And I think that it's also a good reminder, because I can often feel alone or lost in this world. And it's a good reminder to know that I am being guided by a loving God. Um, I can often be selfish, and I can definitely get caught up in earthly desires. And this is kind of a reminder that earthly pleasures are fleeting, and I'm never going to be fully satisfied until I reach my final goal, um, which is heaven. This poem has made me think deeply about my purpose here on earth, um, and to understand what is truly important in my life. I am going to link the Lead Kindly Light hymn that we sang with this presentation so that you can go and listen to it if you want to hear what it sounds like in a hymn. I do recommend it. It's beautiful. So, a few questions for the class. Have you ever felt spiritually lost or uncertain in life? Why do you think that is? Do you think that the pleasures of this world can make us perfectly happy? Why or why not? Do you believe that there is a creator who is guiding his creation? Why or why not? Thank you for watching my poetry presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to listening to your presentations and discussing them later this week. Thank you.